wrapped up. The results of their presidential straw poll. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul wins the top honor for the second year in a row. My next guest, though, really fired up the CPAC crowd this week, slamming President Obama and saying he is the biggest national security crisis that we are facing right now. And former UN ambassador and Fox News contributor John Bolton joins us this evening. Good evening, Ambassador.
Good morning, Judge. Glad to be with you. Good evening.
It's been a long week for you, I know, for both of us. Ambassador,
Right.
You say the president is the biggest national security crisis. Why?
Well, in addition to all the mistakes he's made in policy after policy, the fundamental problem is his view of America's place in the world. He thinks America is too strong, too assertive, that we've benefited too much from our power, and that the world and America would be safer if we were a declining power, more inward-looking. I think that's 180 degrees the opposite of reality. As you said in your open, Ronald Reagan believed in a policy of peace through strength. That's the way to protect American interest and avoid hostilities. I think Obama's weakness is what turns out to be provocative and really endangers us going forward.
All right. And, you know, when you, in your speech this week at CPAC, and you really fired them up, I mean, there's a tremendous applause for what you said. Most of your speech had to do with the reality of where we are on the world stage today and how the rest of the world is looking at us. Why don't you just give us an idea of the points that you used to reference your final conclusion that we're leading from behind?
Well, I think if you look at region after region around the world, America and its interests, its friends and allies are in retreat, and our adversaries are advancing. The situation in Ukraine is a case study of how not to manage an assertive, aggressive adversary like the Russians and what they're doing there. The same is true in the case of China, that's making territorial claims that will turn international waters into a Chinese lake. We've still got the problem of the global war on terrorism. As the Director of National Intelligence, Obama's own appointee, said a couple weeks ago, the level of the terrorist threat is just what it was the day before 9/11. The proliferation of nuclear weapons in Iran and North Korea. I mean, this is a very long list. I think the worst example, of course, is the murder of Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 others in Benghazi on September the 11th, 2012, still unavenged by this president. And when you look at that long list of weakness and failure, it emboldens our adversaries. It says this is a president that we can use to our own advantage. This is a president we can take advantage of, and they will do it.
Well, Ambassador, when the president says, I want to take down the Army to pre-World War II levels, and what I want to do is, you know, he starts his first term apologizing, basically, doing an apology tour starting in Cairo. I mean, what do you think that his motivation is? What do we gain by this, especially, and I'm going to add one more premise, the takedown of the missile system in Europe in exchange for nothing from Putin, who now, it seems, we're now in a Cold War.
Yeah. Well, I think the president believes that American strength is provocative, that our ability to influence events actually causes more instability and insecurity in the world than preventing it. And I think that's just basically wrong. It's American weakness that's provocative, but the president's view is that a weaker America will actually be safer for ourselves and everybody else is what motivates him. I'm not a shrink. I don't know what his psychology is. I think he learned this at Columbia and Harvard Law School. I think it's ideological combined with just gross inattention to international threats to our country. But the net effect is, it seems to me, unquestionably the case that our adversaries, whether they're states, whether they're terrorists, over the remaining years of his term are going to be eager to act in their self-interest before he leaves office.
As we're seeing with Putin. I mean, he believes in Russian exceptionalism. It sounds like Ukraine, Crimea are going to be back in what was the old Soviet Union, now Russia. I mean, does he stop with Crimea, Putin?
Well, I think Putin still thinks he can get hegemony over the entire Ukraine. I think partition, whether it's the Crimea or a larger partition, the rest of east and southern Ukraine, would be his fallback position, his plan B. I think Putin really wants sway over the government of the whole country. Ukraine is the biggest prize in the former Soviet Union, but Putin has already made it clear back when he was president the first time that he expects to see Russia basically dominate in that space. And I think the lesson for everybody else, the Baltics, the Central Asian republics, is if Putin can prevail in Ukraine, he can prevail wherever he wants. And that just sets the stage for what comes next. I think China watches what happens in Ukraine and says if Putin can do it there, we can do it in the South China Sea. This will have a cascading effect on American interest around the world.
Real quick question, Ambassador. A lot of talk at CPAC, and they're giving me a hard out soon. Do you have any special plans for 2016?
Not for 2016 yet. I want to see more House and Senate members who believe in a strong American national security. I've set up a PAC and a super PAC to help make that happen. That's my focus now.
All right, Ambassador Bolton, thanks for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, and coming up, Dr. Ben Carson.